Have you ever been hurt by someone who smiled in your face but stabbed you in the back? Someone who lied, used you and tried to break your spirit just for fun? That kind of person is called a narcissist. And what they don't know is that the universe is always watching. Today we're talking about something powerful, the law of return. It's a rule the universe never breaks. What you send out comes back. But when someone sends out cruelty, pain, and lies, the return isn't just karma, it's judgment. And for chosen ones, the ones who are here to shine light in a dark world, that return hits hard. Because when they're attacked, heaven steps in. This video isn't just a story, it's a spiritual wake-up call. You'll learn why the war you never asked for made you stronger, how your silence became your shield, and how the very pain you felt became a weapon in the hands of the universe. If this speaks to your soul, join our community. We're a family of truth seekers, healers, and chosen ones rising together. Show love in the comments, hit that like button, and stay with me till the end, because the final part of this message might just shift your entire mindset. Your comeback is already written in the stars. Now it's time to step into it. They walked around like they ruled the world, laughing while others cried, lying without guilt, breaking hearts without thinking twice. People like this believe they can get away with anything. They wear fake smiles, speak sweet words, and pretend to be perfect. But deep inside, they know exactly what they're doing. They hurt others on purpose, and when they see someone in pain, they feel power, not pity. But the universe doesn't sleep, and it doesn't forget. There's a law older than any rule made by humans. It's called the law of return. This law works like a mirror. Whatever you send out, whether it's love or hate, truth or lies, comes back to you. Some people call it karma, but this law doesn't just bring payback. Sometimes it brings divine correction. They thought they were untouchable until heaven responded. That's when everything starts to change. Their charm stops working. The lies start falling apart. Their fake world begins to crumble. Slowly, the same pain they gave to others begins to follow them like a shadow. They start to lose what they once took for granted: respect, trust, peace of mind. They feel lost, but don't know why. That's the law of return in action. But here's the deeper truth. When the person they hurt is a chosen one, heaven gets involved directly. The chosen one may look like an ordinary person, but they carry divine energy. Hurting them isn't just an insult, it's a spiritual crime. That's why the punishment isn't small. It's not about revenge, it's about restoring balance. The universe doesn't shout, it whispers through broken plans. It teaches through loneliness, silence, and loss. This isn't a movie where lightning strikes. This is real life, where the fall is slow but sure. That's divine correction, and it always arrives right on time. They don't use swords, they don't shout, they don't fight in public. But what they do is far more dangerous. Narcissists fight in silence, a hidden war that targets your heart, your mind, and your soul. They smile while they lie, they hug you while they plan to hurt you. Their words sound sweet, but something always feels off. That's because their battle isn't loud, it's quiet. And that's what makes it so dangerous. This is called a silent war, a kind of spiritual battle you may not even know you're in. Narcissists use tools like manipulation. They twist your words and make you question yourself. One moment they praise you, the next they break you down. It's like walking on eggshells. You never know what version of them you'll get. Over time, you begin to lose confidence. You stop trusting your own thoughts. You feel confused, guilty, and tired, but you don't know why. That's gaslighting. They make you doubt your own reality. You tell them they hurt you, and they say, "You're too sensitive," or "That never happened." They make you think you're the problem, even when you're the one being hurt. They also drain your energy, spiritually and emotionally. You give your time, love, support, and forgiveness, but it's never enough. They take and take until you feel empty. They don't just want your attention, they want control over your peace, your power, and even your purpose. But remember this: they fight in silence because they know the truth can expose them. They hide behind smiles because the truth of what they are would make people run. The good news? When you finally see this war for what it is, you begin to win. Awareness is your armor. Boundaries are your shield. And your peace is your victory. This war may be silent, but your healing will be loud. This wasn't a fight with fists. There were no shouting matches in crowded rooms, no battles in the streets, no visible war, but make no mistake, a war happening, not on earth, but deep within the soul. When people hear the word battle, they think of noise, weapons, or angry voices, but the most powerful wars don't look like that. They happen in silence, in shadows, and deep within the spirit. This is what we call spiritual warfare. And it's not about who's stronger on the outside, it's about who controls the energy, the thoughts, the emotions, and the truth inside us. In this kind of war, every thought matters. Every lie whispered by a narcissist becomes a weapon. Every time they make you question your worth, every time they plant doubt or fear inside you, that's part of the battle. And if you're not aware, you might start believing the lies. That's how they win, not by breaking your body, but by breaking your spirit. This is why it's so dangerous, because people around you might not see the war. They might think everything is fine, but inside, your soul is screaming, your heart is tired, and your light is growing dim. That's the battlefield the narcissist chooses, the soul, where wounds are harder to see but deeper to heal. But here's the powerful truth: the soul also holds the greatest strength. You don't need armor or a sword, you need awareness, faith, and light. You win this war by protecting your peace, holding on to your truth, and refusing to let darkness live inside you. The narcissist might have started the battle, but they didn't realize who they were fighting. Not just a person, but a soul, chosen by the universe. And in a war of energy, the pure always outshines the poisoned. So remember, the real battlefield was never around you, it was always within you. And your healing is proof. You survived the war. They were mocked, misunderstood, and mistreated. People saw their kindness as weakness, their silence as fear, and their suffering as failure. But what no one saw, what the narcissist could never understand, is that the chosen ones were never just victims. They were spiritual judges in disguise. In this world, some souls are sent not to fight back with anger, but to reveal the truth by simply being who they are. Chosen ones carry a sacred assignment. They walk with light in a world that often chooses darkness. And when darkness tries to consume them, through lies, betrayal, or emotional abuse, the universe watches closely. The chosen one doesn't scream or seek revenge, they don't need to. Because their silence speaks louder than chaos and their heart is aligned with something higher. Every tear they cry becomes a testimony. Every time they forgive, it records judgment in the spiritual realm. What was done in secret is brought into the light, not by force, but by the divine presence that lives within them. That's why narcissists are drawn to chosen ones. They want the light, but hate the mirror it holds up to their soul. The chosen one reflects everything the narcissist is hiding: truth, purity, and spiritual authority. And when they try to break that light, they unknowingly trigger a divine court case in the spirit. Chosen ones aren't here for attention, they're here for alignment, to bring justice without lifting a hand, to be used as vessels through which heaven delivers balance. Their pain has purpose, Their journey carries weight, and when the time is right, the same soul that was mocked becomes the sign of judgment for those who caused harm. They never needed to prove their worth. Their role was never just to survive, it was to judge with love, truth, and divine fire. They didn't just attack your feelings, they went deeper. The narcissist wanted your mind, your clarity, your peace, your ability to think for yourself. Because once they control your thoughts, they can control your entire life. That was their goal from the start: to confuse you, trap you in self-doubt, and make you forget who you are. But the spiritual realms saw it all. You weren't just fighting emotional pain. You were in a spiritual war over your destiny. The narcissist may have smiled and pretended to love you, but their real mission was to block the path you were born to walk. They sensed your light, even if you didn't. They saw your calling, your potential, your divine purpose, and it terrified them. So they attacked it with lies, manipulation, and mind games. They didn't break your body, but they wanted to break your mind, because if they could plant fear, confusion, and self-hate inside you, they could keep you from rising. They could keep you small, distracted, and dependent on them. They wanted you so lost in their web that you'd never reach your destiny. That's how deep the attack went. But heaven didn't stay silent. The spiritual realms stepped in, not just to comfort your pain, but to protect your purpose. You may not have seen the shift, but it was happening. Doors began to close that were meant to keep you trapped. People were removed from your life, even when you didn't understand why. You were pushed into isolation, not as punishment, but as protection. Heaven moved pieces behind the scenes, breaking toxic bonds, opening new paths, and whispering truth back into your soul. That moment you woke up and said, "I deserve better." That wasn't random, that was divine. It was heaven pulling you back onto your path. Because your purpose is sacred, your voice, your light, your mission, it matters in the bigger plan, and the attack on your mind, it failed. You may have walked through confusion, pain, and deep spiritual warfare, but you didn't stay there. Your healing began when you remembered who you are, when you stopped believing the lies, when you started rebuilding step by step, thought by thought. That was your victory. And while the narcissist wanted to destroy your destiny, they only exposed it, because now you rise, not in bitterness, but in clarity, not in anger, but in strength. You're not just surviving, you're stepping into everything the enemy tried to keep from you. Your mind is your power, your peace is your proof. And your destiny, it's defended by heaven itself. You stayed quiet, you walked away. You didn't scream, expose, or try to get even. Some may have called you weak. They didn't understand. You weren't weak, you were wise. Because in spiritual warfare, silence can be louder than shouting, and walking away can be the most powerful move. What people didn't see was that your stillness wasn't surrender, it was sacred. You didn't fight back. But the law of return did. The narcissist thought they won. They fed off the illusion of control, thinking you'd never rise again. They watched you break, they watched you cry, and they believed that meant victory, but that's where they were wrong. Because what they didn't know is that every move they made in the dark was being recorded in light. The law of return is not human justice, it's higher. It doesn't need drama, noise, or revenge. It works in silence, and it waits, not to punish, but to correct what was thrown out of balance. When you chose not to repay evil with evil, you activated something powerful. Your hands stayed clean, so heaven's hands could move. The narcissist's betrayal, manipulation, and cruelty may have been ignored by others, but the universe missed nothing. Not one tear, not one lie, not one silent scream. You didn't curse them. And that's why the curse couldn't follow you. You didn't match their energy, so your energy stayed protected. You let go, and by doing so, you made space for divine justice to flow in ways you couldn't imagine. The law of return is not just karma, it's a spiritual system designed to defend destiny and restore balance. And when someone attacks the chosen one, the law doesn't just respond, it returns with multiplied force. So while they thought you were powerless, the truth is, you weren't alone. You were backed by something ancient, sacred, and unstoppable. You didn't fight back, but heaven did, and heaven never misses. The narcissist believes they've won. They walk away without guilt, rewriting the story in their mind, pretending they were the victim or the hero. But the universe isn't fooled. It doesn't work on emotions or opinions. It works on truth and precision. This isn't about revenge. It's about restoring what was broken and correcting what was thrown out of balance. The narcissist can lie to others. They can even lie to themselves, but they can't lie to the universe. Every action they took, every manipulation, every betrayal, every energy they drained was recorded, remembered, and measured. The universe doesn't seek to punish them because you were hurt. It responds because the energy they unleashed must return home. That's the law of return. And here's the part they don't understand. It's not personal, it's spiritual. The same energy they sent out must come back, not as payback, but as correction. They sowed confusion, so they'll live in it. They broke trust, so trust will break around them. They tried to dim your light, and now they'll struggle to find theirs. This isn't chaos, it's alignment, balance. The narcissist can delay the consequences. They can distract themselves with new people, new stories, even new victims. But eventually the judgment catches up. Not because someone wished it on them, but because justice is a natural law, one that never forgets and never fails. They can't outrun what their own energy has built. The truth is, judgment doesn't come with thunder. It often arrives in silence, in lost peace, in the feeling of being stuck, in watching everything they manipulated fall apart, piece by piece. They won't understand it at first, but deep down their spirit will know this is the return, this is the reckoning. And no matter how far they run, they can't escape what they've set in motion. They thought no one saw them, not the silent manipulation, not the lies told with a straight face, not the betrayal hidden behind smiles. But they were wrong, because the universe is not blind, it is not asleep, and it is not emotional. It is intelligent, conscious, awake. The law of return doesn't function like human justice, doesn't need to shout, prove, or rush. It simply remembers every action, every word, every hidden intention. It watches not with anger, but with perfect balance. Every lie the narcissist told was recorded. Every time they gaslighted, twisted the truth, and made you question your own reality, was written into spiritual memory. Every betrayal was echoed in the frequency of the universe itself. This is not just karma. Karma is a word we use to describe a deeper law. This is the law of return, energetic justice that operates with exactness. It does not forget. It does not lose track. It waits patiently, silently, until the energy finds its way back home. The narcissist believes they've escaped. They move on quickly, seek new supply, wear new masks. But the law of return does not chase. It follows the imprint of the energy they released. Like a boomerang, it knows where it came from, and it knows where it must land. It's not about punishment, it's about restoration. The universe doesn't seek revenge for you, it simply balances the scale. And when something or someone has caused deep imbalance, especially to a soul aligned with light, that imbalance must be corrected. So if they lied, they will live in a web of lies. If they betrayed, they will be betrayed. Not because you wished it, but because that's what they sent out. The law of return does not forget. It remembers everything, especially the things no one else saw. They chose chaos, they chose confusion, darkness, and control. They didn't just hurt you, they made it a battlefield. But it wasn't just words or actions, it was spiritual. They waged war in hell's energy, using lies as weapons, gaslighting as their armor, and control as their throne. To them, this was power. They thrived on pain, feeding off your confusion, twisting love into something toxic. But what they didn't know is that while they fought you on earth, your case was already rising in heaven. The battlefield they dragged you into wasn't your home. You weren't meant to live in the energy of fear, chaos, or self-doubt. But still, they pulled you into the fire, hoping it would consume you. They wanted you to fight back in their language, with rage, with revenge, with destruction. That would have kept you trapped in the same dark cycle, but you didn't. Instead, you chose silence. You chose peace. You chose healing. That's when heaven got involved, because your soul wasn't made for war. It was created for justice. And when the storm came against you, the spiritual realm didn't stand by and watch. It opened a courtroom above the chaos, one where truth doesn't need to scream and justice doesn't come with noise, a sacred space where your pain became evidence and your restraint became testimony. You didn't need to plead your case, your spirit spoke for you. Hell was loud, cruel, and manipulative. But heaven? Heaven is exact, measured, and divine. Hell tried to confuse you, but heaven brought clarity. Hell tried to break you, but heaven restored you. Hell wanted to stain your soul, but heaven anointed it. While they laughed and mocked, believing there would be no consequences, your name was being spoken in places they couldn't reach, not in gossip or bitterness, but in light, in protection, in sacred correction. They saw only the fight, but heaven saw the truth. And in the heavenly court, the narcissist's tactics don't hold up. Lies collapse under light. Manipulation shatters when exposed to divine order. And power, built on control, loses every time when it stands against a soul chosen for higher purpose. You didn't just survive, you rose, because your strength didn't come from matching their chaos. It came from standing in your truth, even when your heart was broken. It came from holding your peace when every part of you wanted to fight. It came from trusting that the real battle wasn't here and the real power was never theirs. They chose hell as their battlefield, but heaven chose you as its vessel of justice. And that's why you already won. They planted darkness, they sowed manipulation, deceit, and control, and they believed deep down that they'd never face the harvest. But every seed returns, and the universe never forgets what was planted in secret. This is the truth narcissists refuse to face. The law of return isn't biased. It isn't emotional. It doesn't care if someone regrets what they did or pretends to change. It only cares about the energy that was sent out, and energy always comes back multiplied. So when the seed is poisoned, the harvest is devastating. The narcissist may have enjoyed the planting. It felt powerful to control others, to twist truth into confusion, to make someone doubt their own light. It fed their ego. It made them feel above consequences. But what they forget is that every lie becomes a root, every betrayal becomes a vine, and every moment of cruelty grows into something alive, something they must eventually meet face to face. The return doesn't come immediately. That's why they think they got away with it. But the law of return is not fast, it's precise. It waits until the conditions are perfect. And then the harvest comes in ways the narcissist never expected. Relationships crumble, their masks fall, their inner emptiness begins to devour them. What once gave them control now traps them. What once made them feel untouchable now exposes them. And here's the truth, they can't survive their own harvest, because what they sowed into others wasn't just pain, it was soul rot. And when that returns, it doesn't just impact their world, it destroys it. They end up confused, isolated, lost. Not because someone cursed them, but because they cursed themselves. That's the cruel beauty of the law of return. It doesn't punish, it mirrors. And when what's mirrored is poison, the reflection burns. They thought you were weak when you didn't fight back. They thought you were finished when you let go. But you knew you don't need to chase justice. It's already written into the roots of the earth. And when the seed is poisoned, the return is always cruel. They walked into the room, and everything changed. Not because they shouted, not because they fought, but because their light spoke louder than the shadows. The chosen one doesn't come to entertain or blend in. They come as a mirror, a walking truth, a vessel of divine clarity sent into bloodlines, relationships, families, and systems still poisoned by generational darkness. When the chosen one shows up, old secrets start to shake. Hidden pain begins to surface. What was buried for decades, pain, curses, toxic patterns, suddenly begins to break open. Why? Because the light exposes what darkness tried to keep safe. The narcissist wasn't just cruel to you, they were a symptom of something older, deeper, and more rooted. Maybe it was a family pattern of control. Maybe it was years of abuse and silence. Maybe it was pain passed down like a curse, normalized, protected, even honored in twisted ways. But then you arrived, and your presence, your refusal to play by the old rules, your desire for truth and healing, it disturbed everything. Not because you wanted to destroy, but because you were sent to reveal. The chosen one doesn't carry just their own light. They carry the light of heaven's courtroom, and wherever they walk, judgment begins. Not out of hate, but out of spiritual alignment. Your light became a mirror that showed people who they really were, not the version they built, not the mask they wore, but the truth of their energy. And when the narcissist looked into your light, they saw their own curse staring back. That's why they tried to break you. That's why they turned others against you. Because you reminded them of what they'd buried and what they'd become. But you didn't come to fight them. You came to interrupt the cycle, to be the crack in the system, to make sure the curse didn't continue. And now, because of your light, what hid for generations can no longer survive. You didn't just expose one person, you exposed the darkness of a bloodline, and heaven is watching. They thought they had time. They thought the game would go on forever. The manipulation, the deceit, the cycles of control. For years, maybe decades, they'd gotten away with it. Nobody questioned them. Nobody saw through them. They learned how to blend in, how to charm, how to twist reality and make others doubt their instincts. They grew confident in their power, arrogant in their control. But what they didn't know was that the universe always sends a final test before collapse, and that test was you. You didn't arrive by accident. You weren't just another person in their story. You were the turning point. The moment where heaven placed a mirror in front of them and said, "Here is your last chance to see who you truly are." You were the last invitation to change, not through punishment, not through fire, but through truth, through light, through reflection. Your presence alone disrupted their illusion. You didn't even have to say much. Your energy spoke volumes. Your kindness, your boundaries, your refusal to play the same old games, it all awakened something ancient inside them. Not love, not change, but fear. Because for the first time they were seen, not worshipped, not feared, seen. That's when the war began, not a physical war, but a spiritual one. They lashed out, tried to confuse you, drain you, isolate you. They pushed every button, tested every boundary, because they sensed it. This time was different. This time, Their usual tactics wouldn't work. This time, the mirror didn't shatter. You stood your ground, you questioned the narrative, you walked away when they expected you to beg, you stayed silent when they tried to provoke you, and that silence, that refusal to react in their language was the sound of divine judgment falling. They didn't realize you were the last chance for mercy. One more opportunity to stop the cycle before the collapse began, but instead of rising, they resisted. Instead of reflecting, they blamed. Instead of healing, they harmed. And that choice, their final decision when faced with light, sealed their fate. Because when the chosen one shows up, the countdown begins. Heaven does not send its vessels lightly. They are placed with intention right at the tipping point of spiritual reckoning. You weren't there to be a victim, you were there to be the evidence. And everything they did to you became the proof they could not hide. Not from others, not from the universe, not even from themselves. What followed wasn't punishment, it was collapse. Slowly, everything they built began to unravel. The masks slipped, the lies tangled, the people they manipulated began to question, to turn, to walk away. Their charm stopped working. Their control faded. And what was left? Emptiness, isolation, the weight of their own energy finally returning home. They didn't fail because of you. They failed because of their own choices. But you were the line drawn in eternity. You were the sacred pause, the divine moment when grace whispered, "There is still time." And when they ignored that whisper, karma didn't rush. It unfolded, it remembered, it judged. You were not their end, but you were their last beginning. They tried to break you, not once, but over and over again, slowly, silently, with smiles hiding daggers and words soaked in manipulation. The narcissist played a long game, not just to hurt you, but to drain your light, hoping you'd never recover. They wanted you to collapse so they could stand taller. They didn't just fear your power, they feared the day you'd fully awaken to it. But the universe, it was never sleeping. It watched everything, every lie they whispered, every seed of doubt they planted in your mind, every time they drained your energy and blamed you for the emptiness they caused. Yet it did not strike back right away. It didn't rush to balance the scales or rain down judgment. Why? Because divine timing is perfect. The universe waits, not to forget, but to position. It doesn't bring justice when you're still wounded, still questioning your worth, still hoping for their apology number. It waits until you've healed, until you've reclaimed your power, until you can witness the fall without it breaking you. Judgment does not come to punish the victim or satisfy revenge. It comes to restore order. But restoration requires strength. It requires clarity. The collapse of the narcissist, the fall of the mask, the unraveling of their web is not just something to watch. It's something that teaches, empowers, and confirms what your spirit already knew. So the universe delayed not out of cruelty, but out of compassion. It said, not yet. They're still learning, they're still growing, they're still rising. And when you finally reached that point, when your heart was no longer begging for answers, when your mind stopped trying to understand evil, when your soul chose peace over proving anything, that's when the unraveling began. You see, justice doesn't roar, it reveals. And when the narcissist's tower began to crumble, piece by piece, you stood, not as someone watching in bitterness, but as someone witnessing the truth from a healed perspective. You no longer needed to speak. Your silence said everything. Your growth was the answer. Your survival was the evidence. The universe knew that if judgment had come sooner, it might have shattered you, or worse, you would have tried to save them. But now you understand. They weren't just your test. You were the moment their mirror cracked wide open, because divine justice isn't rushed. "It's reserved for those who have done the work," cried the tears, endured the fire, and emerged in truth. And when that moment finally came, you weren't scared, you weren't bitter, you were ready to witness the fall, not from the shadows of pain, but from the mountaintop of your own rising. They thought you were just another target, another soul to manipulate, drain, and discard. They didn't count on your spirit being unbreakable. They didn't see the divine fire in you because they were too consumed with control. To them, your silence meant weakness, your kindness, naivety, your empathy, a flaw to exploit. But what they failed to understand is this: you weren't sent to suffer, you were sent to expose. You didn't just survive their spiritual war, you became the evidence. Every wound you carried, every tear you cried, every sleepless night became a living record of the abuse, the deception, the betrayal. But you didn't stay broken. You rose, you healed, you transformed. And in doing so, you became something powerful, the proof of their judgment. Not because you screamed for justice, but because your wholeness revealed their harm. This is what makes chosen ones so dangerous to the narcissist. Not their anger, not their revenge, but their healing. Healing rewrites the narrative. It exposes what they tried to bury. When you shine, you cast light on every dark corner they hoped would stay hidden. Your peace unmasks their chaos. Your growth reveals their stagnation. And your glow? It's the echo of everything they tried to kill but couldn't. Heaven doesn't always speak with thunder. Sometimes it speaks through you, through your resilience, your clarity, your freedom. You became the final word, not by force, but by flourishing. Because the law of return doesn't only restore what was lost, it returns what was stolen. And when the scales of justice begin to balance, your healing becomes the reason why judgment must fall. You are the mirror. You are the record. You are the answer to a question they thought would never be asked. You didn't need revenge. You became the evidence. They expected the sky to crack open in rage. They expected thunder, chaos, destruction, the kind of judgment they'd seen in stories where villains are swallowed by fire and lightning strikes from the heavens. But that's not how it happened. Judgment didn't come with fire. It came with light, quiet, steady, undeniable light. The kind that doesn't scream but reveals. The kind that doesn't destroy but exposes everything hidden in shadow. The narcissist waited for drama, for explosions, for confrontation. Instead, the universe answered with clarity. That's how divine justice truly works, not with fury, but with revelation. And for those who've lived in deception, truth is the most terrifying light of all. For so long, you thought silence meant nothing was happening, that the heavens had forgotten, that the pain they caused you went unnoticed. But the silence wasn't neglect, it was preparation. The universe wasn't ignoring what was done to you, it was gathering truth, lining up every act, every lie, every betrayal like stars in a constellation of accountability. It was waiting for the right moment, not to burn them down, but to turn on the light. Because when the light comes, there's no more hiding, no more illusions, no more charm to cover cruelty, no more sweet words masking toxic intentions. When light arrives, everything is seen for what it truly is, and that is judgment. You see, fire consumes, but light convicts. It makes the truth impossible to unsee. It forces accountability, not through punishment, but through exposure. And for the narcissist, whose entire world is built on control, image, and illusion, being seen in truth is the greatest reckoning they could ever face. Not because someone yelled, not because someone fought back, but because nothing they did could dim the light that chose you. You became the mirror. You became the reflection they couldn't escape. And in your healing, In your wholeness, in your peace, they were confronted by everything they pretended not to be. The narcissist doesn't fear consequences, they fear exposure. They fear the day their lies stop working. They fear the moment their victims no longer doubt themselves. And most of all, they fear the ones who walk away, not with revenge, but with radiance, because there is no weapon stronger than someone who chose light over retaliation, who chose growth over destruction, who chose to rise when they were expected to fall. And that's what you did. That's what judgment looked like. It was your light. Your life became the courtroom, your recovery, the testimony, your transformation, the verdict. You didn't need to fight to be heard. You just needed to become. And in becoming whole, you proved everything they tried to erase. That's the paradox of spiritual justice. It doesn't scream. It doesn't explode. It simply arrives. And when it does, it stays. Light lingers. It doesn't leave when the drama ends. It remains as a silent witness to everything that was hidden. And while the narcissist stumbles under the weight of their own reflection, you stand tall, not as the destroyer, but as the revealer. This is how the divine corrects. Not with fire and ash, but with illumination. The light doesn't just show who they are, it also reveals who you've always been, strong, chosen, whole. You weren't sent to punish. You were sent to shine. And that is the cruelest judgment for those who tried to dim you, to see you thrive, to see you walk in truth, to see you glow with a light that refuses to bow to their darkness. That's the kind of justice that doesn't just return what was stolen, it transforms everything. It elevates you beyond survival into purpose. So no, judgment didn't come with fire, it came with light. And that was always more than enough. They thought your silence meant surrender. They believed your stillness was weakness. To them, you had gone quiet because you had nothing left. No more strength, no more fight, no more voice. But they were wrong. So very wrong. What they didn't understand is that your silence wasn't an absence. It was a signal, a sacred turning point, a divine hand reaching into the timeline, because the final blow was never going to come from you. It was going to come from the heavens. And it wouldn't be loud or violent. It would be precise, measured, and undeniably final. For so long you fought to be understood, to explain the manipulation, the betrayal, the silent war you didn't start but were forced to survive. You tried to reason with the unreasonable, love the unlovable, and see the good in someone who was wearing a mask. You bent over backward to keep peace while they studied how to break you from the inside out. And when you finally stepped back, when you gave up the exhausting battle of defending your truth to someone who twisted it for sport, they thought they had won. But silence is never empty, not when it comes from the soul of a chosen one. Silence is the language of spiritual surrender, not to them, to heaven. It's the moment when your spirit stops trying to fight in the flesh and trusts something higher to intervene. It's a deep knowing that your battle is not just yours. And when you let go, when you fell into that stillness, the universe did not see defeat. It saw permission. It saw an open gate. That was the moment heaven moved, because you weren't just silent, you were aligned. And when heaven moves, it doesn't come with noise. It comes with timing, with echo, with balance. Every tear you cried in silence became a ripple. Every betrayal you endured became weight on a scale that heaven was watching. The narcissist couldn't hear it, but the universe did. And so the final blow didn't come from your hands. It came from everything they thought didn't matter. Your quiet, your peace, your distance, your refusal to fight on their terms. Because the truth is, when you stopped arguing, the courtroom opened. When you walked away, the verdict was written. When you chose peace over revenge, heaven chose judgment. And that judgment, it came like an echo, not of your anger, but of your healing. Not of your rage, but of your restraint. It came through closed doors and mirrored souls, through sleepless nights they couldn't explain and empty victories that tasted like ash. It came in the form of everything they couldn't take from you. Your light, your voice, your future. Because they didn't just war against you, they warred against the divine plan within you. And that plan, though delayed, was never denied. They thought they broke you, but the breaking was an awakening, and from the silence of your soul, heaven echoed back a reckoning that no lie could outrun. You see, the final blow wasn't loud, it wasn't violent, it wasn't anything like they imagined. It was elegant. The narcissist fell, not because you cursed them, but because you stopped chasing closure. You stopped giving them access to your energy. You stopped being their fuel. And when the source dried up, their mask began to rot. They collapsed under the weight of everything they projected onto you. And you rose not as a warrior, but as a witness to divine order, a vessel of return, a soul no longer tethered to their chaos. So let them think you said nothing. Let them mock your stillness. Let them call your peace weakness, because while they shouted into the void, you whispered into the heavens. And heaven answered, not with fire, not with fury, but with truth. The final blow was never yours to give. It was heaven's echo of your silence. And it was enough. There are battles we never asked for, fights we didn't even know we were in. While we were simply trying to love, heal, and move forward, there were forces in the shadows working to dismantle our peace. The narcissist didn't just attack your emotions, they targeted your soul. They waged a war of silence, of manipulation, of distortion, and through it all you stood, maybe bruised, maybe weary, but still standing. That alone makes you powerful beyond what the world understands. The truth is, you were never weak for staying silent. Your silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. The universe watches in stillness, not haste. Every betrayal, every cruel word, every lie, it all echoed louder in the spiritual realm than any scream could on earth. You didn't need to fight the way they did because you were never meant to stoop to that level. You were being positioned, not for revenge, but for revelation. And when the universe finally moved, it didn't come with fire, it came with light, it came with exposure. That's what true justice looks like, not loud and messy, but clean and final. Understand this, you were not just a victim in this story, you were the mirror. You were the trigger that brought divine judgment. The universe doesn't rush because it waits until you are strong enough to see the truth without breaking. It waits until your healing becomes evidence, until your peace becomes proof.